So the French parliamentary elections have delivered an extraordinary upset. I don't think anyone would have expected last week that the left-wing New Popular Front would come out on top. No party got an overall majority, so no party is even close to getting anywhere near a majority. Second came Emmanuel Macron's Ensemble, and then third we had the National Rally, even though they got the highest share of the vote on 37%. Tom, what have you made of this? I mean, I think, is this possibly the last gasp for the cordon sanitaire? Because it seems to be the result mostly of tactical voting, negative voting, anyone but Le Pen.
Yeah, because in a sense, it's another victory for what they refer in France to the Republican Front that would kick in whenever Le Pen essentially was vying previously for the presidency, but now legislatively as well. That's exactly what happens. That's the reason you got such a drastically different result from the first round to the second, because you had coordination between the centrist bloc and the left-wing bloc pulling candidates where the other one didn't have a chance, therefore not splitting the kind of anti-RN votes, and it's delivered this result. So in a sense, it's another victory for the Republican Front, if you like.
Yeah.
But again, if you look under the surface, that's really not the whole story, is it? Not least because of the fact this was still RN's best election result ever.
Yeah.
I mean, when Emmanuel Macron came to power in 2017, and in the legislative elections that followed, they had 8 seats.
Yeah.
They're now on something like 143. And given Macron's whole pitch, aside from I'm going to modernise France and make us a start-up nation and all the kind of usual sort of centrist lorem ipsum that tends to figure in these people's kind of programmes, it was very much, I am the one who's kept out the far right.
Yeah.
And yet, under his tenure, you've seen not just the sort of polls for the for Rassemblement National, but also in actual elections, in terms of seats, grow and grow and grow and grow. And I've always been struck by the remarkable complacency of the sort of centrist elites in general when it comes to populism, is that as soon as there's one defeat, even if it's narrower than last time, they're like, oh, that's over now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's incredible that they will just willfully ignore the kind of longer term trend, which is that there are an awful lot of people in France, particularly working class voters, who are not flocking towards the New Popular Front. They are flocking towards Le Pen's party. Really want to hit out of the establishment, and they're furious about various issues which the centrists and the left are kind of united in not really caring about.
Yeah.
Certainly when it comes to green issues, certainly when it comes to migration. And that's not going to go anywhere. And you cannot deal with this phenomenon by just ignoring it and doubling down.
Yeah.
You have to respond to those concerns that those voters have, but there's a refusal to do any of that, and just to continue saying, oh, we've got to wave it again. Let's see what happens next time.
And even the fact that literally every election now is about Le Pen, is about the far right, or, Rassemblement National. There's no other thing on the table. It's, can we keep them out? And that's it. I mean, it is extraordinary. You mentioned some of those issues like migration and green. And, the New Popular Front have come up with an extraordinary program to double, triple, quadruple down on some of those issues. So if you take migration, they want to basically accelerate the pace at which migrants can claim welfare. They want to fast track what they call climate refugees, which could be, that's potentially hundreds of millions.
British people don't like the rain,
Yeah, exactly. Is your coastal town being eroded? Get over to France. Green issues, they want to ban pesticides. They want to not just, phase out petrol cars by 2035, as the EU does. They want every single petrol car off the road by 2040. They want to double down on net zero. They want to have a referendum every time someone proposes a nuclear power plant. I mean, it's just absolutely crackers. And it's not just... A lot of people will talk about, they would have raised taxes and all that. They're missing the bigger picture. They are taking the issues that people care about and, just putting the finger up at them and saying, yeah, actually, you hate this. We're going to we're going to times it up to 100. And as you said, Tom, this is basically the working class versus the bourgeois elite. It's extraordinary, even though these are nominally left-wing parties that used to represent the working class. If you look at the polls, it's the wealthiest people who support them.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a divide for some time in French politics between those who live on the periphery and outside of major cities and those who live within them. And I think that divide is not going anywhere. Le Pen said that this effectively deferred victory until the presidential election. I think there's probably some truth in that. Like it or not, the right in France is the resurgent force, and I think they have Macron has been revealed to be holding on to a very, very fragile position, and that's not going anywhere.
And every vote, it gets more and more fragile. Every coalition gets more tenuous. I mean, it's worth pointing out that the New Popular Front is itself a coalition between multiple parties, that don't agree with each other on basically anything. They were fighting like rats in a sack only just a few weeks ago before the elections were called. Whereas, at least the National Rally have a coherent sense of who they are. The idea that you're going to have this coalition, then possibly joining hands with the centrists. So, it's so much compromising and horse trading that would have to go on to sustain that. It's just going to be another year or so of paralysis, and as if that's a victory for democracy, for stability. It's just insane.
And I think the Macron reign is a bit of a warning to Keir Starmer to a certain extent as well. I know he's a slightly different political animal. He kind of emerged through the Socialist Party to a certain extent, at least certainly had some government appointments, later to kind of form this more centrist, in quote marks, liberal party that basically laid waste to both the centre-right and the centre-left in France back in 2017. But nevertheless, I think seen as a figure, and certainly discussed as a figure, who is the response to populism. He's a kind of anti-populist figure of the centre, and yet he's stuck to this playbook, which Starmer in his own way seems keen to repeat, which is the way that you respond to this upsurge, to this calling into question of the authority of the governing parties and institutions, is, as you say, to double down on all the things that they're upset about, because it's good for them, and they'll realise it eventually. It's insane. And I think what we're now seeing with Scholz in Germany, really basically leading a zombie government at this point. Trudeau looks very likely to be on the way out. You've got Biden, as we've just been talking about, not looking good there.
Yeah. The SNP have had an amazing kicking.
Yeah, absolutely. And strangely and unfortunately, Labour have been the beneficiaries of that. But nevertheless, you see a picture is that when you have this kind of, all of these parties, one thing they do share, even if they've got slightly different traditions, is a devotion to this new, woke, green, authoritarian sort of suite of policies, which they seem keen to impose on a restive population and insisting that they'll feel the benefit eventually. And they're all coming a cropper. So I think it's a reminder that playbook, deranged as it is one a lot of politicians, including Keir Starmer, are sticking to, even in the face of all the poor results it's producing for people.